been shot to death in cold blood on Central Florida highways, including the busy tourist route of I-75. But this time, there's an even more chilling twist to the slayings. Police say for the first time in criminal history, these killers may be murdering with a feminine touch.
Aileen Wuornos admitted to killing 7 men out of self-defense, but only pled guilty to first-degree murder and armed robbery with a firearm. Now, this begs the question, how does somebody end up like this? Along with focusing on her crimes, we're going to explore the psychology behind her formative years and examine the age-old question. Was she born a killer, or was she made into one? Welcome to Mind of a Killer. I'm your host, Anneliese Chase, and in today's episode, we're diving into the early life of Aileen Wuornos, who headlines have dubbed America's first female serial killer. This is episode 2 of this 3-part series. If you've listened to the last episode, we talked about Charles Cullen, the Angel of Death. In this episode, you'll definitely hear some similarities between the two cases here today. As we continue, we will dive into, the mind of a killer. We will go over the crimes and the psychology behind these killers. Aileen Wuornos was born on February 29, 1956, in Rochester, Michigan, to a deeply troubled family environment. Her mother, Diane Wuornos, was just 15 years old when she married Leo Dale Pittman, a violent and abusive man with a criminal history. Pittman was later convicted of child molestation and was incarcerated at the time of Aileen's birth. He never played a role in her life as he committed suicide in prison in 1969. Abandoned by her mother at the age of 2, Aileen and her older brother Keith were placed into the care of their grandparents, Laurie and Britta Wuornos. However, their home life was anything but stable. Laurie, who she called Dad, was rumored to be her biological father. He was an alcoholic and reportedly a very abusive man, frequently beating Aileen and subjecting her to verbal and emotional abuse. Several reports indicate that Aileen was also sexually abused by her grandfather, and even possibly by her older brother. She later claimed that her grandfather forced her to strip naked before he beat her, and that he would throw her out on the house on cold nights, leaving her to sleep in the woods. One of the last court hearings before Aileen's execution, one of her friends took the stand and said this about her grandfather.
I don't know how much you want me to say. He was a bastard.
Do you recall an incident when you and Aileen skipped school?
Yes.
What happened when, did you go to Eileen's house?
I walked home with her, and we had gotten caught. And I remember looking through the front. They had a screen door view. And the minute she walked in, he had her over a chair. And I stood there and watched him. And he beat the hell out of her with a black belt that was around his waist. He took it off and told her to lean over the chair and walloped on her for a good 5 minutes.
Is this what you call a spanking?
Oh, no. No, it was like it left me hypnotized.
Did he know you were watching?
Yeah, he did. He was aware I was watching.
By the time that she was 11, she was engaging in sexual acts in exchange for food, cigarettes, and drugs. She began skipping school regularly, spending most of her time in the woods near her home drinking and taking drugs with the older boys. Despite these hardships, she still sought for some sort of belonging, often trying to connect with the local teens. But her erratic behavior and rough exterior made her an outcast. I won't do this every time, but this is very similar how Charles Cullen was brought up, with no parental love or guidance very early on. Not having the support of his parents or friends, this is a big puzzle piece for their downfall. but it does not mean that everyone who has traumatic pasts will end up like killers. Her self-destructive behavior increased as she entered adolescence. She frequently ran away from home and eventually was expelled from school for violent outbursts and misbehavior. By 15, she became pregnant, allegedly as a result of a rape by a friend of her grandfather's, who was the local pedophile named Jeff. She was sent to a home for unwed mothers and gave birth to a baby boy in 1971, who was placed up for adoption soon after. After she dropped out of school completely and was kicked out of her grandparents' home at the age of 15, she left to go fend for herself, and she only survived through sex work and petty crimes, often living in the woods or abandoned buildings. Aileen had a deep-seated need for validation and affection, yet she pushed people away with her violent tendencies and outbursts. Those who knew her during this time recalled that she often lashed out physically and verbally, leading to frequent conflicts. She also had a pattern of exaggerating stories about herself, possibly to start a way to gain sympathy or create an identity amidst her feelings of abandonment. Throughout the 70s and 80s, Aileen drifted across the country, but ended up in Florida looking for sun, friends, engaging in sex work, theft, and other minor crimes. She relied on hitchhiking to travel, often stealing from those who picked her up. Her life was marked by constant instability. She had no permanent residence, and she moved from one unpleasant hotel or homeless camp to a next. In 1976, she briefly married Louis Fell, a wealthy yacht club president who was decades older than her. However, her volatile and violent nature led to the quickly dissolution of their marriage. She reportedly attacked Fell with his own cane, leading him to file an annulment only after 9 weeks. During their short marriage, Aileen frequently spent Fell's money on alcohol and gambling, further straining their already strained relationship. Over the next several years, Aileen racked up a long rap sheet. She was arrested multiple times for armed robbery, auto theft, disorderly conduct, and using fraudulent identification. She spent time in and out of jails, but never managed to maintain a stable life. Her encounters with law enforcement grew significantly violent, and she was very known for her explosive temper. Many of the people who encountered her describe her as erratic and unpredictable, often swinging between charm and aggression in an instant. A psychologist named Todd Grand looked into Aileen's past. This is what he had to say.
Repeated trauma, the attachment issues with everybody that she met. She really didn't even have one person that she could trust. And we see a system that, despite all these charges and convictions, didn't appear to be alarmed. I mean the criminal justice system here. Perhaps it was because she was a female, and the people in the justice system thought that a female couldn't become a serious offender. But either way, it seems fairly clear she was never taken seriously and never received any effective mental health treatment.
During this period, Aileen had brief relationships with both men and women, but they were often ear-piercing and abusive. She would sometimes develop strong attachments to those who showed her kindness, only to become violent when she felt rejected. Her drinking and drug use worsened, leading to more aggressive behavior. She frequently engaged in prostitution to support herself, often working at truck stops or long highways. She often viewed men with deep distrust, believing that many sought to harm or exploit her. This perspective would later play a significant role in her justification for murder, possibly extending from the abuse of her grandfather. In 1986, Aileen met Tyra Moore at a Daytona gay beach bar. Moore, who was a hotel maid, became Aileen's most significant companion, and the two of them quickly formed an intense romantic relationship. Moore was reportedly more reserved, while Aileen was known for her aggressive and unpredictable behavior. Despite these differences, they lived together and depended on each other for survival. Aileen was deeply devoted to Tyra and took on the support of provider, supporting them through sex work. However, their financial struggles persisted, leading Aileen to become increasingly desperate and reckless. The relationship played a crucial role in Aileen's eventual downfall, as Tyra would later cooperate with law enforcement to secure her own immunity. Tyra's role in Aileen's life was heavily scrutinized. Some believed that she was a passive participant who feared Aileen's violent tendencies, while others argued that she manipulated Aileen into providing her and ultimately betrayed her to save herself. Regardless of Moore's exact level of involvement, it is clear that her influence on Aileen was significant. Aileen, for her part, blamed Tyra for her downfall, claiming that Tyra had taken advantage of her and betrayed her. This sense of betrayal, combined with Aileen's mounting paranoia, made Tyra a central figure for the psychological narrative of Aileen's life. Some have argued that Tyra's role in the case highlights the complexities of abusive relationships and the ways that each individual can become enmeshed with each other's destructive behaviors. Aileen's murder spree took place between 1989 and 1990 in Florida, where she believed that she killed 7 men. These murders were committed while she was living in a volatile relationship with her partner Tyra Moore, whom supported her by engaging in sex work. Aileen was convicted of 6 of the murders and later confessed to all 7. Her victims were primarily middle-aged white men, and their deaths were violent. This is what Todd Grand said about her first murder.
With this first murder, she was taking control. She wasn't going to be harmed. She had been on the defensive for so long, and that wasn't working. And of course she wanted the money. She did, after all, kill for material gain. She rationalized that this victim had it coming. Her schema, her cognitive distortions, her way of seeing the world, made it easy for her to see the first victim as a potential aggressor, someone whose life did not have any value. Once she killed
the first victim, Richard Mallory, was a 51-year-old electronics store owner. He picked up Aileen as a hitchhiker on February 30th, 1989, and was later found shot dead in his car. Aileen claimed that Mallory had attempted to rape her during the ride and that she had killed him in self-defense. She shot him several times with his own gun, then disposed of his body. Mallory's murder set the tone of the patterns of the killings that would follow. The second victim was Robert Constable, a 65-year-old man. Aileen picked him up while he was driving through the area. She claimed that he, too, had tried sexually assaulting her. She shot him in the head and robbed him. His body was later found in a wooden area. Aileen claimed that the murder was in self-defense, becoming a regular theme in her explanations of these killings. Aileen's third victim was Peter Simmons, a 65-year-old man who was last seen on May 31st, 1990. Simmons had stopped to give Aileen a ride. He was never found. It's believed that Aileen killed him and disposed of his body. His car was later discovered, but his body was never recovered. Aileen confessed to his murder, but his remains were never located. The fourth victim, Tory Barres, was a 50-year-old man who was picked up by Aileen on July 30th, 1990. Aileen claimed that Barres had tried to rape her, so she shot him in the back. His body was found in a wooded area near Orange Springs, Florida. She later admitted to robbing him of his belongings. The fifth victim, Charles Humphrey, was a 56-year-old former police officer and Florida State Programming Coordinator. On September 11, 1990, he picked up Aileen, and she shot him multiple times in the head and chest. Aileen later confessed to the murder, again stating that Humphrey had tried to sexually assault her. His body was found on the side of the road, and his car was missing but later discovered. The sixth victim, John Walraven, was a 50-year-old man from Wells, Michigan, who had been working as a truck driver. He was found shot dead in Sunaway County, Florida, in the early fall of 1990. Aileen admitted to shooting him, again claiming that he tried to sexually assault her. Walraven's body was found in a remote area, and his car was later located in a nearby town. The final confirmed victim was Steven Nesson, a 47-year-old man who was also shot by Aileen. His body was discovered on November 19, 1990 in Florida. Aileen later confessed to the murder and once again asserted that the killings were the act of self-defense. The killings were initially linked through ballistic evidence and discovery of stolen property. A pattern emerged as police discovered that all victims have been men who were offering rides to Aileen and have been all shot with a gun that was identified as the belonging of the victims or the relation to their death. The investigation intensified as the bodies of the victims were discovered in close proximity to another, and their cars were often found abandoned or linked to Aileen. Eventually, a surveillance operation was set up and the police began to track her movements. After a series of witness statements, pawned items, and forensic evidence, Aileen was apprehended on January 9, 1991, at a Port Orange, Florida bar called The Last Resort. She was initially arrested on unrelated charges, and her fingerprints were later found on the items belonging to the victims. Aileen was brought in for questioning, and Tyra, her partner, played a crucial role in the investigation. Tyra, fearing prosecution for her roles in the crimes, cooperated with law enforcement and secretly recorded phone conversations with Aileen, in which she admitted to the killings. These recordings were pivotal in securing her confession. Aileen Wuornos' confession to the murders was widely publicized. She stated that all the killings were committed in self-defense, stating that the men had attempted to rape her and that she shot them to protect herself. Aileen often became emotional when discussing her motives, and some of her statements were inconsistent, which fueled further debate about her mental state and the true nature of her actions. Aileen's trial began in 1992 for the murder of Richard Mallory, the first victim. During the trial, her defense argued that Aileen had been a victim of childhood abuse and trauma, and that her violent actions were a response to the repeated victimizing by men. However, the prosecution painted her as a cold-blooded killer, claiming that she targeted vulnerable men and killed them for financial gain. The jury convicted Aileen of first-degree murder for the killing of Richard Mallory, and she was sentenced to death on January 27, 1992. She later pled guilty to the murders of 5 more men, and the additional death sentences were handed down. On October 9, 2002, Aileen Wuornos was executed by lethal injection at the Florida State Prison at the age of 42. Her final words were, "I'd just like to say, I'm sailing with the rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus. Like June 6, like the big movie, big mothership and all, I'll be back." Aileen Wuornos remains one of the most infamous serial killers in history. Her crimes were widely publicized, and her story sparked discussions about gender roles, mental illness, childhood trauma in relation to criminal behavior. Many people view Aileen as a victim of abuse who turned into a predator, while others see her as a stone-cold, calculated murderer who took the lives of innocent people. The debate between nature and nurture has long been a central topic in psychology and criminology, particularly when examining the cases of violent criminal behavior. Are individuals born with predisposition towards murder, or are they shaped by their environment and life choices? The case of Aileen Wuornos offers a compelling study of how both biological and environmental factors can contribute to criminology. Aileen's tragic life was marked by severe abuse, neglect, and trauma, yet she also exhibited traits that suggest underlying psychological disorders. Analyzing her case through the lens of nature versus nurture provided insight into the complexity of the interplay of genetic predispositions and environmental influences that may have led to her violent actions. Aileen's early life was defined by neglect, abandonment, and abuse. She never met her father, who was a convicted child molester and was in prison when she was born. He later committed suicide while incarcerated. Her mother was only 15 years old at the time of Aileen's birth and abandoned her and her older brother Keith when Aileen was just a toddler. The siblings were taken in by their maternal grandparents, who became Aileen's primary givers. This is what Todd Grand said about Aileen's childhood.
Now, Aileen was mistreated from the very beginning. She never bonded in a healthy way with her caregivers, now going back to her childhood. So she had some attachment problems, like the development of an avoidant, dismissive attachment style. We see this is related to having hostility, social withdrawal, impulsivity, and detachment, symptoms that it seems like she did have. Just looking at the relationship with the grandfather, if we consider attachment theory, what did Aileen learn from her grandfather? She learned that she was despised by people who were supposed to love and care for her. She learned that people who were supposed to love her would reject her, hurt her, and terrorize her. She learned not to trust anybody. Trusting wasn't a smart move for her if she wanted to survive. And she learned that someone who was physically aggressive had the power in a relationship.
These early life experiences played a crucial role into shaping Aileen's psychological development. Studies in psychology and criminology suggest that childhood trauma, especially when it includes sexual and physical abuse, can significantly increase the likelihood of antisocial behavior, aggression, and criminal activity later in life. Aileen never had the opportunity to develop healthy coping skills or trusting relationships, which may have contributed to her later violent actions. Additionally, growing up in an environment of extreme instability and exposure to criminal behavior likely enforced her distrust of society and shaped her perspective of interpersonal relationships. The lack of positive role models and any form of constructive guidance pushed her further into survival-based decision-making, where manipulation and violence became a means of control. Further compounding her difficulties, Aileen entered adulthood without any education or marketable skills, forcing her into a transient lifestyle. Her criminal record, which include theft, forgery, and disorderly conduct, indicate a pattern of escalating criminal behavior fueled by her unstable upbringing. She lacked the access of mental health care and social services that could have intervened before her violent tendencies escalated. Without a proper guidance or support, she was trapped in a cycle of violence and survival-based decision-making that eventually accumulated into her becoming a serial killer. While Aileen's environment undoubtedly had profound impact on her actions, there is also evidence to suggest that she may have genetic and neurological predispositions to her violence. Her father, a convicted pedophile, exhibited antisocial traits, suggesting a possible hereditary link to Aileen's own antisocial behaviors. Researchers indicate that antisocial personality disorder and borderline personality disorder, both which Aileen was diagnosed with, have genetic components. Neurological factors also play a role in violent behavior. Studies on criminal psychology have found that abnormalities in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for impulse control and decision-making, are linked to the increased aggression and a lack of empathy. While Aileen was never formally tested for neurological abnormalities, her impulsive behavior and erratic emotion responses suggest that she may have impairments in the areas of the brain function. Research into neurobiology of criminal behavior suggests that individuals with reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex may have struggled with regulating emotions and controlling violent impulses, making them more prone to committing crimes. The nature versus nurture debate is not a question of which factors is more influential, but on rather how they interact. In Aileen's case, her genetic predisposition to antisocial behavior may have made her more susceptible to negative influences of her environment. Her traumatic upbringing likely exacerbated any pre-existing psychological disorders, creating a perfect storm for violent behavior. Ultimately, Aileen's story is a traumatic example about how both biological and environmental factors can lead to criminal behavior. Understanding this interplay can help foster more of a nuanced view of the origins of violence and encourage efforts to prevent similar cases in the future. This case also raises important discussions about mental health intervention. Could proper treatment and intervention have prevented her from becoming a serial killer? How can we, as a society, identify and support individuals who are struggling before it's too late? These are crucial questions to consider as we work to improve our understanding of criminal psychology and the systems that allow such individuals to slip through the cracks. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you believe Aileen Wuornos was destined for darkness, or could early intervention have changed her path? Thank you for tuning in. Make sure to join me next week as we explore Richard Chase, the Vampire of Sacramento.